What's up guys, it's Tampa Tech, and these are the tools I use to solder and unsolder. I'm a technician, over 10 years experience. I want to share some of my experience and tips with you guys. Hopefully it helps you out. So I'm going to show you how to solder and unsolder, well, desolder some parts and also some wiring. I'm going to be using Isotip rechargeable soldering iron. This is a really great portable soldering iron. Its rechargeable battery is pretty impressive. It heats up in under 10 seconds, ready to solder, and it's very lightweight, heavy duty shell. You can lock it right here so your kid can't press it, or if you throw it in your toolbox, it won't turn on by accident. Anytime you want to use it, you just press this button, the light lights up bright. That means you get a full charge. If the light is dim, that means you got to recharge it. This is a great solder iron. I also use a plunger. This is a solder sucker or a vacuum. So right here, you just push that button and it sucks out the solder. And then you twist this off to dump all the remaining solder that you collected. See? And you dump that in the trash. So that's where it all ends up. It's pretty good stuff. I had this for about 10 years. It still works great. And also I use, in junction with the solder sucker, is desoldering braid. Now you can make your own using wire and flux. I'm going to show you that later. But this is really cheap. It's Radio Shack. It's basically just wire and flux, and it sucks out the solder or absorbs it. It's like a sponge. Here's another brand, but they're all pretty similar. And here's some flux. This is the best thing to use if you're soldering. Basically this cleans the surface so the solder will bond better on whatever you're soldering to, like a pin or a capacitor or whatever, or the board, the soldering pad. This is really great. Or if you're even soldering two wires together, flux really helps bond the solder to the wire. And I'm using some solder. This is a silver bearing solder. It has rosin core. I believe this one has, doesn't say it right here, but yeah, you want to get the rosin core because it's going to help you solder. And I'm using a wet sponge. You just clean the tip, and that's how you clean your tip, basically, all the excess solder. Alright, so what you want to do first is you want to tin the tip of your solder iron. And what I mean by that is, the only thing you have to do is tap just a little coating of solder on the tip of your solder iron, and you'll see it shine. Just a little goes a long way. And that's all you have to do, just a little bit, and that's enough. You don't want to glob it on where it drips off. And then you can just clean it off like that. See? So that's how you clean it off. So let's go ahead and re-tin it. Alright, so now let's go ahead and zoom in and start soldering. Alright, so let's go ahead and start taking parts out. So I'm going to take out this capacitor right here. I'm going to take out one of these capacitors. And let's go ahead and take out this one right here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and heat it up like that. Once the solder liquefies, you want to use the plunger. Put it over here on top and suck out the solder, just like that. See? See how the solder went away a little bit? And then I want to clean it up with the desoldering braid. So I use both actually. So I use the solder sucker to get out the majority of the solder, and then I clean it up with the desoldering braid. Just like that. Don't overheat the soldering pad because it can detach from the board, and that's not a good thing. So don't overheat it. A 40-watt solder iron should be fine. Let's go ahead and heat it up. And then cover it. There you go, that's a good one. See? Zoom in. If I zoom in, it gets blurry because I have a crappy camera. Well, it's not crappy, it just this focus sucks. So anyway, so that's what it looks like. That's pretty good. So I don't think I need to clean it up with the desoldering braid. As long as the pin wiggles and breaks free from the board, you're good. But it looks like it's still attached to the soldering pad. All right. Now, if it's not working, you might need more flux. And so by dipping it in here and getting more flux on there, it should absorb that remaining solder out. You don't want to breathe the stuff in. Can't be too healthy. All right, and then flip it over. All right, and then should wiggle right out. Just like that. See? Pretty good. And then the stripe side is the negative of the capacitor, and the other side is the positive. So when you put it back in, make sure you put it back in according to that dot. Make sure you put it back in according to that dot. There should be like a stripe or a dot on that side. And then you want to line it up with the stripe side of the capacitor. So now let's go ahead and solder that back up. And you want to heat up where the pin and the pad is, right at that solder joint. And it takes about 10 seconds for this solder iron to heat up. Just be patient. You don't want to rush anything. And just a little goes a long way. That's all you need. You don't want to put globs of solder on. Then they actually can overflow and touch other solder pads, and that's when you short stuff out. Let's go ahead and solder it back up. This one, right where the pin and the pad is, right at that joint. And that's it, that's all you need. Now for bigger ones right here, you might want to use a higher wattage solder iron. I use usually like a 50-watt solder iron for bigger solder joints. This soldering iron, even though it's rechargeable, I guess if it's equivalent to maybe a 30 or 40-watt solder iron. But see how it takes a little bit longer to get this one out? This is where I would use a 50-watt solder iron. Let's go ahead and put that solder sucker over it. You want the best suction as possible. Cover it completely. And there you go. That worked out pretty decent. And let's go ahead and get the remainder out. This really works great for, like, you know, desoldering capacitors, smaller capacitors, but really use electrical 50-watt solder iron for bigger pins. Or adjustable solder iron works great. All right, so let's go ahead and solder that back up. And a little goes a long way. There you go. And then that's it. You should have a nice even amount of solder all the way around. For ICs, you can do is use a heat gun, heat it up with the heat gun, and use tweezers to pull it right out. I did a video how to do that. That's a totally different video. For wires, let's go ahead and solder some wires together. So I'm gonna cut it right here. Let's go ahead and get some wire together. You want to twist it right here. And I'm going to show you how to solder with flux. So you want to heat up the wire right here and then add some solder. See how it's not absorbing? Well, this is where flux comes into play. So let's go ahead and dip it into the flux. And if you're having a problem where it's not absorbing onto the wire, the solder, you want to dip it in flux and it's going to work amazing. So let's go ahead and there you go. You don't want to breathe that stuff in, it's not too healthy. Alright, so let's go ahead. Alright, so now let's go ahead with the flux on it. Let's heat it up. See how that works? It's soaking right in. It works really nice. And so what you want to do is just twist it on. You get it like that. And then heat up the wire and then they'll bond together that way. And once you heat up the wire, you want to add the solder to the wire, not to the solder iron. And then you can wrap it up with electric tape or, you know, the heat shrink tube. Clean it off with a wet sponge. So if this video was informative, give me a big thumbs up and share this video to anyone this video may interest, and subscribe to Tampa Tech for more how-to videos like this one.